do these experiments in nightclubs, the same person wears a sort of ginger wig and not a ginger wig, and they test how many people are rebuffed on approach and how many people are sort of anyway. So that's the good news. If you want to know why, well, you're lucky that you're American, because it's going to give you a bit of a head start. We are genetically hardwired to seek out a high degree of genetic mixing in our partners, in our mates, which is, I think, why almost everybody finds that ribbon of sort of South America, Spain, Italy, up to Israel, bits of North Africa. Pretty much everyone finds them hot. So pretty much everybody wants to have sex with people from that bit of the world, because there's that nice cafe au lait complexion, Greece, of course. That nice cafe au lait complexion. Pretty much everybody, and of course Latin America too, pretty much everybody finds them attractive because they have a high degree of genetic mixing. Well, gingerism, ginger hair, is a recessive gene, so it doesn't pop up unless there isn't much else going on in your family tree. So ginger hair is a sign that your folk have stayed in one place for a really long time and bred with each other. Which, on the one hand, makes you sort of, quite a pure blood specimen, but on the other, makes you relatively unattractive from an evolutionary point of view. And the other problem, the reason we're sort of hardwired to avoid it, is that ginger hair is the same genes that do it create freckles, or at least they often exist together. And freckles, of course, are cancer factories, and we are hardwired to avoid people with lots of freckles. Anyway. It's all very interesting. But when I say that Islam goes for the vulnerable in society, and the reason I said that you're lucky to be American is that Britain, where I'm from, in England in particular, is subject to the uniquely virulent ginger prejudice. There is nothing like it, and it's partly all the things I just talked about, but it's also historical and cultural. So we've had historical conflicts with the Scots, with the Irish. After the potato famine, the Irish all came over and everyone hated them. And these countries all had high numbers of redheads. For all these reasons, there is a colossal statistical difference, way beyond anything that could be an accident, a colossal statistical difference in the number of red-headed Brits, in the Brits that are likely to become, that convert to radical Islam, that become terrorists. They're identified by news reports of the intelligence agencies as redheads. They are vastly more likely to have red hair because the radical preachers single them out as outsiders, as people who are likely to be marginalized, as vulnerable. And ginger children are vulnerable in the UK for all the reasons I said. But they sort of find a sort of weird concentration in England for historical and also evolutionary reasons. So people are nastiest to gingers in England, nastier than anywhere else in the world. And for that reason, Islamic hate preachers know to seek out ginger children or ginger teenagers, because they're going to be bullied at school. They're going to want to be part of something. They're going to want to find some purpose and brotherhood in life. So if you look at Anjem Chowdhury, this weird, I think he's in prison now. I think he's finally been put in prison. Or Abu Hamza, the hook-handed cleric in London. They always have these cabals of ginger kids around them. It's very interesting. Anyway, sorry for that diversion, but it's like, do you have that program Mastermind over here? Do you have it here? It's a program in England, Mastermind, where basically really, really, really smart people who knew absolutely everything about a ridiculously specific subject, like the music of the Beatles from June until August 1962. Everything about it, where everything was recorded, who took the photo on the magazine cover, like all that kind of. Anyway, mine would be ginger prejudice, right? All right, let's get back on track. Islam today, in preying on the vulnerable, is sort of like communism in the early stages of the Cold War. They're presenting young, disaffected people with an idealized, tribal, utopian vision that is drawing in millions. And like communism, it's inspiring violence all over the world. There's one thing we learned from the battle with communism, it is that you cannot compromise on your values. You cannot apologize for yourself like the left constantly wants us to do. The progressive left in this country is desperate for us to start apologizing for precisely the things that make the West free and strong and great. And coming to you as a European, as a visitor, I have to tell you, it is very important that America stays free and strong and great, because the rest of us really need you. And the left is asking you to apologize for precisely those things that have made you wonderful. Well, like Thatcher and like Reagan, The what we have to do is present future generations with a vision of the West that's compelling enough to beat the vision from the East. It's exactly what happened with the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that's what we have to do now, and we have to do it in part with laughter, with culture, showing people living under these repressive theocracies that our way is better. And who knows, maybe, hopefully, we can win some of them over. Like Thatcher and Reagan, we must try, if we can, to do that. And it isn't hard. The superiority of the West is self-evident. We just need to discover the courage to talk about it. And we need to talk about it loudly. And we need to not be silenced by the left. We need to not be cowed. And we need to not lose our sense of mischief, even after terrible things happen. Now, we hear a lot about moderate Muslims, and many people are going to be upset about my speech so far. They say, well, you're talking about Islamism, you're not talking about Islam, you're talking about Islamic terror, you're not talking about those nice, that nice girl I know in the cafe who's perfectly nice, she's not going to strap something to herself and hurl herself into a building full of people and blow herself up. Well, one, you only have about 3.3 million Muslims in this country. You have, for the most part, the descendants of moneyed, educated, middle and upper class Muslims who could afford to get here, and a smattering of people from various other places. You don't have, for instance, the 2 million Muslims in Germany who arrived abruptly and are radically reshaping radically reshaping the culture of Germany, they're radically reshaping how it feels to walk down the street in Germany. Now, we hear a lot about moderate Muslims. In practice, we simply don't see them. All the moderate Muslims I know are ex-Muslims, or they haven't been to Friday prayers for months or even years. London has just elected a so-called moderate Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, who is praised as a moderate, but many have been wondering just how moderate he really is. Khan has banned sexy underwear advertisements from the underground, which is like our subway, our metro. It's one of those other weird cases in which you sort of see feminists and Islam working in tandem, like a sort of unholy alliance. It's very weird. Does he want to make the underground more Sharia compliant? Or is that just a happy circumstance of pandering to feminists? Well, if the outcome looks the same, what's the difference? Sadiq Khan's met with a lot of shady people in his life, and this is also the mayor who is happy. This is the mayor of London. The mayor of London is perfectly happy to show up to segregated rallies where the women have to stand at the back and cover their heads. And he says nothing about it. He says absolutely nothing about it. In one of the great cities of the West, one of the most important, possibly the most important city in the world, women are being forced to sit at the back. We're having segregated public spaces again. And this has crept up on us out of nowhere. I don't want the same thing to happen to the US. This is a mayor who says, by the way, that part and parcel of living in a big city is terrorism. Part and parcel of living in a big city. Now, England's one of the most illuminating examples of a lack of moderates. A Gallup poll in the UK found that not a single one of 1,001 people polled, of all the Muslims polled, believed that homosexuality was an acceptable lifestyle choice. Not a single Muslim polled said that homosexuality was an acceptable lifestyle choice. The entire world loves Malala. Do you know Malala? That odiously dull little thing. Well, she has all her speeches written by her UN dad. I mean, good Lord. Nobel Prize winner for championing the education of girls. But her opinion, which passes in the media as moderate, is, quote, "The more you speak about Islam and against Muslims, the more terrorists we create." So Malala's opinion is if we all just shut up and stop criticizing Islam, they'll stop killing us. Well, forgive me, as a gay man, if I don't take that as an exaltation of peace, but rather as a threat. Because that's what it sounds like. I can't be the only person who reads it that way. I can't be the only person who reads it not as an exaltation to peace, but as a threat. Now, Muslim theology says that God isn't constrained even by logic. So if Allah, in other words, wants 2 + 2 to equal 4 today, but to equal 5 tomorrow, that's okay. Like that's just how it works. Recall Muslim outrage in 2006 when Pope Benedict XVI gave a lecture in Regensburg on faith and reason. Benedict dared to quote a medieval dialogue between a Christian and a Muslim that made clear Christians think that not acting reasonably Christians believe that not acting reasonably is contrary to God's nature, whereas Muslims don't believe that God is bound by rationality at all. Curtis Yarvin, that some of you will know as Moldbug, who is a Jewish entrepreneur and blogger, said that nonsense is a better organizing tool than the truth. Anyone can believe in the truth, he says. But to believe in nonsense is an unforgeable demonstration of loyalty. It serves as political uniform. For many Muslims, that nonsense is Islamic science, which holds that the earth is egg-shaped and that the stars are missiles created by Allah to throw at devils, and that this is the only science they need. There are scientists, by the way, working on nuclear reactors in Pakistan who believe that the reactors are powered by fairies. They call them jinns. They buy this equipment in from elsewhere, plug it in, see it working, and believe that Allah is doing it with fairies. Or consider the ascendant art of Islamic creationism. There's a guy called Harun Yahya in Turkey, in Istanbul. Or as we should say, Constantinople, who this guy, funded by the Saudis and living in Turkey, who is engaged in this massive program of spreading sort of Islamic creationism. It's an extraordinary thing. You know, creationism in the US is sort of now restricted to, you know, a few, forgive me for this, relatively batty people in a couple of states. But in the Islamic world, it is on the ascendant. The Islamic world is not going away, quite the opposite. Scientific inquiry is virtually dead in the Islamic world. Arab nations stand near the bottom of every measure of human development. There is no world-class university anywhere in the Muslim world. Spain translates more books every year than the Arab world has in 1,000. Every single year in Spain, more books are translated into Spanish than the Arab world has bothered to translate into Arabic in 1,000 years. Some people in Saudi Arabia still believe that man has never been to the moon. Now, some of you tonight might not believe we've been to the moon, but this is America, and you're allowed to believe crazy things without being beheaded for it. That's okay.